I walked into my lakeside cabin after 3 quiet weeks, only to find a stranger redecorating it like it was hers. She didn't flinch. She smiled, dialed 911, and told them I was the intruder. Cops came fast, guns drawn. I showed my ID, she showed a deed with her name on it, and then she whispered something no one was supposed to hear. "You're not the first, and you won't be the last." What happened next changed everything. She stood there like she owned the place, wide-brimmed hat, pressed white blouse, and not a single ounce of surprise on her face. "Oh, Dylan," she smiled as if we were old friends. "You're back early. I've been optimizing your cabin for you." I froze. Fresh flowers I didn't buy. Books I'd never seen stacked neatly on my coffee table. Expensive candles lit, her camera on a tripod facing the lake. Everything looked curated. She walked over and flashed her phone. A listing on Lakefront Zen Sanctuary for $450 a night with 5-star reviews. "We already have 2 bookings this week," she beamed. My jaw clenched. "This is my home. You can't be here." She just laughed. "Actually, I can." Before I could respond, she opened a leather folder, sleek, official-looking, and pulled out documents stamped with logos, signatures, and legalese. According to the Pine Lake Homeowners Association, she said smoothly, when a property remains unused, the HOA has the right to manage it on behalf of the community. My chest tightened. "There is no HOA," I said through gritted teeth. "I read every word before I bought this place. This is private land." She didn't blink. "Then, I suggest you call your lawyer after you calm down." And just like that, she pulled out her phone and dialed 911 again. "Yes, I'm being confronted by an unstable man inside a managed property. I'm concerned for my safety." I stood there inside my own living room watching her lie to the police with a smile on her face. And worse, they believed her. 15 minutes later, a sheriff's cruiser pulled into my driveway. Deputy Harris stepped out calm but cautious, one hand already near his holster. Victoria greeted him like a gracious host. "Deputy, thank you for coming so quickly," she said warmly. "This gentleman forced his way into a property currently under HOA management." I tried to explain keys in hand ID and pocket voice shaking with rage. "This is my cabin. I own it. She's trespassing." "Deputy," Harris looked between us. One man with keys. One woman with polished paperwork and poise. He sighed. "Sir, until this is cleared up through civil court, I need you to vacate the premises." I stared at him stunned. "You're kicking me out of my own house, just for the weekend." Victoria stepped onto the porch arms, folded like a queen, watching victory unfold. I packed my bag. Like a criminal. I shoved clothes into a duffel with shaking hands, heart pounding, jaw clenched. I couldn't believe this was happening. My sanctuary, violated, twisted, turned into a business I never approved. But then I saw it. On the mantel, where my father's old pocket watch used to sit, there was only a shattered glass case. The watch, his watch, was crushed, mangled beyond recognition. Next to it, a folded note. Handwritten, elegant script. No name. "This is only the beginning. Everything you treasure will disappear, like this house, like you, unless you learn your place." My breath caught in my throat. This wasn't just theft anymore. This was personal, targeted, deliberate. I looked around at the staged furniture, the foreign candles, the air that no longer smelled like home. And I knew Victoria wasn't just trespassing. She was trying to erase me. I checked into a rundown motel 20 minutes from Pine Lake, the kind with buzzing lights and curtains that never fully close. I couldn't sleep. My mind replayed every moment, the shattered watch, her fake smile, that letter. I tried calling my bank to access my deed closed until Monday. Tried reaching my lawyer out of town for the weekend. Tried reporting Victoria for fraud. Civil matter, they said. Even the rental listing was still up online. People were commenting how peaceful and luxurious the stay had been. 5-star lies. I scrolled through my email searching for anything to prove I owned that cabin. But everything important, deed insurance mortgage, was locked in a safety deposit box. All I had now were my keys, my name. and nothing that anyone would believe. Victoria had erased me not with violence but with confidence, and the system was letting her do it. The next morning I got a call from the sheriff's office. "Mr. Maddox, we've received multiple reports about your behavior. Could you come in for a quick conversation?" Confused. I showed up. In the small, fluorescent-lit interview room, Deputy Harris was no longer neutral. He was guarded, cold. There have been concerns, he said, flipping through a manila folder. Allegations of erratic behavior. Possible mental instability. One report mentions threats you allegedly made to Ms. Langford. What, I nearly laughed. That's absurd. He slid a printed email across the table. Someone impersonating me filled with threats and violent language. Another page showed an online profile under my name linking to conspiracy forums I'd never seen. She says you've been unstable since your father passed. The walls felt closer, my voice useless. I walked in to defend myself and walked out looking like a ticking bomb. I stumbled out of the station, adrenaline burning through my veins. They were trying to break me from the inside out. That's when she found me. An older woman, rough hands, tired eyes. "I'm Betty Walsh," she said. "I live 2 cabins down. We need to talk. Now." In my motel room, she dropped a thick envelope on the table. Photos, documents, printed messages. "You're not the first," she said. "Victoria's done this before. Same routine, same lies, same result." She showed me pictures of a cabin that looked eerily like mine, now owned by a holding company. The man who lived there, gone. Just disappeared. Cops wouldn't listen. Lawyers gave up. So he sold at a loss. She leaned in. "I think he didn't walk away. I think he was forced to vanish." Her voice dropped. "And now it's your turn in the game." Betty laid it all out, names, timelines, patterns. 3 other cabins had changed hands under suspicious circumstances. All had absentee owners. All were quietly listed under shell companies within months. The last one, Evan Pike, a software engineer. Our engineer fought back for a while. Emails, legal threats, even media outreach. Then one day, silence. His social media vanished. Voicemails went unanswered. His cabin, renovated, rented out, sold. Victoria didn't just push him out, Betty said. She erased him. I stared at the grainy photo of Evan in front of his cabin, eyes proud. Unaware he was marked. How does she get away with this? Betty looked me dead in the eye. Because she's not alone. There's a whole machine behind her fake HOAs, real estate fronts, investors with dirty money. She paused. And they've never had anyone fight back this long. Betty pulled out a map hand-marked with red circles around properties ringing Pine Lake. Gray River Developments, she whispered. Real estate group on paper, but behind it, a laundering operation. Dirty money flows through shell rentals like yours. Each circled cabin had a pattern owner absent, sudden HOA claim, then transferred to a holding company. The land didn't just disappear, it became part of something bigger. They're building a ghost resort, Betty said, a fake development to move real money. No guests, no permits, just cash flow and concrete. Victoria wasn't flipping my cabin for fun. She was feeding a machine, and I was next. I looked at Betty, stunned. You're telling me this whole lake is their front? She nodded. And Victoria. She's the face, the charming, ruthless recruiter. Then she leaned in, voice low and cold. They already tried to erase one man. The next target is you. That night I drove back to the edge of my property, no lights, no sound. Just trees and the dark shimmer of Pine Lake. I crawled through the woods behind the cabin flashlight taped red. The air reeked of fresh paint, synthetic candles, and something chemical. I found the breaker box I'd installed 2 years ago still intact. Behind a loose panel near the deck, my old security system was right where I left it. Disconnected, but not dead. 15 minutes later, I had it back online. Motion sensors, interior cams, remote access through my phone. Every movement, every conversation recorded from now on. I wasn't just a victim anymore. I was watching, listening, And this time, Victoria wouldn't see it coming. In her eyes, I was erased. But I was about to rewrite the ending. The next morning, I texted Victoria. "You were right. I overreacted. Maybe we can work something out together." She replied within minutes. "Smart man. Let's talk today." 2 p.m. at the cabin. I arrived dressed like a defeated partner button-down shirt, notebook in hand. Fake humility on my face. Inside, the cabin had transformed even more. New rugs. Wall art I'd never seen. A welcome basket. Victoria greeted me with practiced warmth. "Now we're thinking like grown-ups." I nodded, smiled. "Let's talk optimization." Over the next hour, we discussed lighting angles, rental pricing, seasonal packages. I nodded, asked questions, complimented her vision. All while, my hidden cameras rolled. She talked freely about maximizing profit, ignoring regulations, bending permits. She thought I'd folded, but every word was a nail in her coffin. This wasn't cooperation. This was infiltration. Victoria led me out to the back deck where construction was already underway. What used to be a peaceful dock was now a massive, floating platform half-finished, sprawling into the lake like a parasite. Men hauled materials in silence. Power tools screamed. Gas cans sat open near the water. No permits posted. No safety gear. "This is the crown jewel," she said proudly. "Private dinners, events, full buyouts for retreats. We're going to triple the cabin's value." "You got permits for all this?" I asked, feigning curiosity. She smirked. "Permits slow progress. By the time anyone complains, we'll be generating revenue and they won't dare shut us down." I nodded. Inside, I was already clipping audio. Oil floated in iridescent circles near the shoreline. Fish drifted sideways. What she called development, I called destruction. And soon, so would the authorities. That night, I reviewed the footage. Victoria's voice clear as glass. Permits slow progress. The lake behind her shimmering with chemical runoff. My camera caught everything: workers dumping adhesive directly into the water, dragging power cables across wet planks, laughing as they tossed plastic wrap into the reeds. One crew member lit a cigarette near open fuel cans. Another hosed down equipment, letting murky gray water spill straight into the lake. I captured it all: timestamps, GPS data, audio logs. But it wasn't just construction malpractice. It was environmental assault, and Pine Lake was dying slowly, visibly. I sent clips to a private environmental lab for testing. The results: toxic levels of contaminants. Violations that would shut down projects 10 times this size. Victoria thought she was building an empire, but she was leaving fingerprints on a crime scene. And I was the one holding the evidence. 2 days later, while Victoria stepped out to take a call with investors, I slipped into the back office she'd set up inside my own cabin. Locked drawer, flimsy key. She underestimated me. Inside, files, ledgers, and a sleek silver USB labeled Pine Lake Ops, internal. I plugged it into my laptop at the motel. Encrypted spreadsheets, names of guests who never stayed. Wire transfers to offshore accounts: Belize, Cayman, Cyprus. All routed through something called Gray River Developments. And then I found it. A PDF titled Acquisition Rollout. Phase 3. My cabin. Betty's. Half the lakefront properties. Marked for absorption. Notes like owner-resistant legal stall likely, and next to mine. Active conversion, high value. Resolve by Q4. My blood froze. This wasn't a rental scam. It was a systematic land grab funded by fraud and cleaned through fake tourism, and I was next on their checklist. That night I drove just to breathe. The road was silent, no headlights, no signs of life. Just pines, stars, and the shimmer of Pine Lake beside me. This was the lake where Dad taught me to fish, where I learned silence wasn't empty but full. Then the brakes failed. Pedal sank. Nothing. I jerked the wheel. Tires shrieked. The car skidded, spun, tree bark scraped metal. A second later, I would have been a name on a cross. I stumbled out, heart pounding like war drums. Underneath the brake line, cleanly sliced. Not an accident, not a warning, an execution. My phone buzzed. Blocked number. Stop digging, you got your second chance. Second. So the first wasn't the brakes. It was what I found back at the cabin, the broken picture of me and Dad, torn in half, dumped in the fireplace. They weren't just erasing my property. They were erasing me. By sunrise, I was at Betty's greenhouse. The air smelled of soil and mint, one of the few places that still felt real. I showed her the USB. She didn't speak for 10 seconds. Then I knew they were scum. But this is industrial. Together, we opened the file, Phase 3, Site Control. Maps of the lake. Red circles everywhere, cabins, docks, trails, even ranger outposts. At the center, Pine Lake Executive Wellness Compound. It looked like a luxury retreat on paper. In truth, a laundering engine. A parasite wrapped in spa robes. This isn't gentrification, I said. It's liquidation. Betty pulled out a printout emails between Grey River execs joking about problem owners and soft elimination. They're not just buying land, she whispered. They're buying silence, influence, cops, judges. And now I understood. Pine Lake wasn't just my history. It was their future, and we were the last obstacle. That night, I couldn't sleep. I traced every company from the documents. They all looped back to one name, Grey River Holdings, LLC, Nevada, registered, cloaked in anonymity. Each fake branch owned part of the lake maintenance cruise shell rental agencies, even hospitality firms. On the surface, legal. Beneath it, a perfect web forged leases, ghost clients, circular funding, and silent investors linked to real estate PACs and corruption probes. They were laundering money through people's memories, turning homes into ledgers. And Victoria. She wasn't a scammer. She was the face of an empire. I backed up every file. Flash drives, cloud storage, even a copy hidden in Dad's old fishing tackle box because if they came for me, I wanted one thing safe. Then Betty whispered, "You think the last owner just gave up?" She shook her head. Eyes glassy. He didn't vanish. They made him vanish. "Eliminated?" I asked, voice tight. Betty nodded grimly. His name was Evan Pike. Software engineer. Lived quiet. Fought hard. She pulled out a manila folder. Inside, photos of Evan's car at the bottom of a ravine crumpled like paper. Official report said accident. Rainy night. Lost control. But Betty had her doubts. He told me he'd found something. Wanted to go public. Then... that crash. She pointed at a time-stamped screenshot and email from Evan to a local reporter. Meeting tomorrow. Everything's ready. He never made it. That was a year ago. My hands clenched. I wasn't just in a property dispute, I was in the same crosshairs. They made it look like weather, she said. They'll make yours look like stress. I looked out the motel window, suddenly aware of every parked car, every shadow. Evan never got his voice heard. I wouldn't let mine go silent. I spent that night building a firewall, not digital physical. 3 flash drives hidden in separate places. One mailed to a friend in Denver with a note, "If something happens to me, go public." One uploaded to a cloud drive under a pseudonym. One taped beneath my car's dashboard. I wasn't being paranoid. I was buying time. Victoria and her handlers didn't fear the law. They feared exposure. So I planned the one thing they couldn't control: light. I contacted the Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources. Told them I had proof of environmental violations with timestamps, lab results, location data. An inspector was scheduled to visit Pine Lake in 4 days. 4 days to trigger a chain reaction. But I needed one more piece. I had to make Victoria talk on record about the sale. The final show was coming, and I was going to write the script. 2 days later, Victoria sent a message. Big day, Friday. Final investor presentation. I want you there. She thought I was all in her obedient junior partner. I played the part. Absolutely, I replied. Wouldn't miss it for the world. The deck had transformed. White drapes fluttered in the breeze. Champagne buckets glinted in the sun. Her floating platform looked like a wedding stage for corruption. 5 investors arrived slick suits, designer smiles, but I recognized one from a mugshot in Betty's file. Fraud charges, sealed record. They weren't investors, they were actors. Paid faces to make everything look real for the paperwork. Victoria handed me a folder. Just a formality, she purred. Ownership transfer. You trust me, right? I smiled back, pen in hand. Course, Victoria. I'm all in. She didn't know I'd already triggered the real performance, and she was center stage. I signed the papers with a steady hand, hiding the fire in my chest. The investors clapped politely. Champagne popped. A drone hovered overhead, capturing the celebration. Everything was for show, just the way they liked it. Victoria leaned in, her voice a whisper wrapped in velvet. You made the right choice, Dylan. Some people fight too hard for things they're destined to lose. I smiled. I've learned to let go, but beneath the table a hidden mic recorded every word. 15 feet away, inside a fake speaker casing, my live stream was uploading directly to a secure server and a private legal watchdog. Every alias, every offshore wire, every environmental violation. She thought this was her coronation. She didn't know it was the start of her collapse. The transfer she celebrated, it was bait, and the hook had already sunk deep. Victoria toasted to the partnership glass raised high like a queen on her throne. The fake investors clapped. Drones buzzed above, capturing her moment of triumph. She spoke to the group with sickening confidence. In 60 days, Pine Lake will be a luxury escape. Discreet, exclusive, untouchable. I played along, nodding, smiling, the perfect puppet. But my heart raced. In less than 10 minutes, my evidence would hit 3 inboxes: state, EPA, a national investigative journalist, and the Environmental Enforcement Division. Just hold the mask a little longer. Victoria handed me a branded folder, Gray River Development Group Confidential Investor Kit. Inside, copies of forged permits, fake occupancy logs, and transfer deeds, one with my name now crossed out, replaced by a holding company. She thought I was erased on paper, but what she didn't know was that I was about to burn her entire paper empire to the ground. At exactly 3:00 p.m., I tapped my phone twice. The signal was sent. From inside the fake speaker, a tiny LED blinked, live feed active. Victoria was mid-sentence boasting about soft zoning influence and land absorption efficiency when her voice crackled through the motel TV I'd left running for Betty. Simultaneously, my backup server blasted the footage to every agency on my hit list. DNR, IRS, DOJ, local news. All of it, her voice, her face. The forged contracts, the toxic lake violations streamed live, impossible to spin. Victoria's glass slipped slightly in her hand. Her eyes narrowed. Something had shifted. I stood. Victoria, I said loud and calm. You just sold the entire dream. On camera. Around us, sirens echoed from the tree line. She turned to me, voice low, venomous. What have you done? I looked her dead in the eye. Set the trap. You walked right in. The air snapped electric as black SUVs skidded onto the gravel. Badges flashed. DNR. Federal agents. County sheriffs. Victoria's smile shattered. But before anyone could speak, a sharp voice cut through the chaos. Stand down. He's interfering with private business. I turned. Deputy Harris. The same man who once made me leave my own home, now stepping between me and justice. He pulled his badge, flashed a document. I have jurisdiction here. We'll handle this internally. Something in me cracked. He was one of them. Betty whispered beside me. They got to him. Then came the final blow. One of the investors, a woman I thought was a nobody, stepped forward, removed her sunglasses. Sarah Chen, my former attorney, trusted, loyal, or so I thought. She looked at me flat and cold. You should have stayed erased, Dylan. The trap had more teeth than I realized. For a moment, the world blurred. Sarah Chen, my lawyer. My friend, now the sharpest blade in their arsenal. Legal leaks, media alerts, court filings, she said calmly, all traced back to you, which means we control the narrative. Deputy Harris closed the gap hand on his holster. You're under suspicion for cybercrimes, property fraud, and inciting public panic. I laughed a single bitter exhale. You're joking. But no one was smiling. Betty reached for her bag. He has evidence. A federal agent snatched it from her hands. I backed away, slowly, mind racing. They weren't just covering their tracks, they were flipping the script, casting me as the criminal. Victoria straightened her jacket mask back in place. You built the show, Dylan. We're just rewriting the ending. One agent raised his radio. Subject secured. Moving to extraction. I was no longer just hunted. I was cornered. They dragged me toward the SUV, zip ties biting into my wrists. Behind me, Betty screamed, You can't disappear him like the others. No one flinched. Victoria leaned against the porch rail, sipping what was left of her champagne. Triumphant. Untouchable. Sarah Chen walked beside me, whispering with surgical cruelty. Every file you sent already buried. Every link flagged as fake. By morning, you'll be a delusional criminal with a vendetta. They thought it was over, but they'd forgotten one thing. The drone. Still hovering. Still live. Still feeding to the only person I trusted beyond reach, my late father's best friend Marcus, a retired federal prosecutor in Arizona. I'd built one last dead man's switch. If I went dark, he'd go loud. And the drone. Still recording. Smile, I muttered to Sarah. This time the whole world is watching. They didn't kill the story, they amplified it. As the SUV pulled away, tires grinding against gravel, a radio crackled inside the vehicle. Code 117, unauthorized detainment detected. Drone feed confirmed. Units en route. Stand down. The agent driving stiffened. Harris cursed under his breath. Then sirens. Not local. Federal. Loud. Close. Ahead, a black van skidded sideways, blocking the road. Doors burst open, badges from the real DOJ, Environmental Task Force, and Internal Affairs. Marcus stepped out, calm, composed. Holding a tablet streaming the live drone feed. Release him. Now. The agents hesitated. Harris backed away. Sarah froze. Victoria, still on the dock, finally dropped her glass. Too late. A swarm of officials flooded the scene, collecting hard drives, phones, documents, even tearing into the fake investor folders. This wasn't just a bust, it was a takedown. And I wasn't the story they buried. I was the witness they couldn't silence. Victoria was the first to break. When they cuffed her on the dock, the mask slipped. Her perfect poise cracked into venom and panic. You don't know who you're dealing with, but the world knew now. News vans swarmed the lake by sundown. Drone footage made headlines. Fake HOA scam exposed. Pine Lake. Scheme unraveled. Sarah Chen was arrested for obstruction. Deputy Harris fired and under federal investigation. And the so-called investors vanished into custody without a word. The cabin's trails and docks were placed under state protection. The lake scheduled for environmental rehabilitation. Betty and I stood together near the waterline, watching crews pull debris from the poisoned shoreline. This place nearly disappeared, she said quietly. Not anymore, I replied. The system bent, but it didn't break. And justice. It came not with noise, but with proof. What happened at Pine Lake wasn't just about one stolen cabin. It was about how fraud hides behind polished smiles, legal jargon, and false authority. Victoria wore confidence like armor, but the truth cuts deeper. Dylan didn't quit. He documented. He endured. And he proved that even the most calculated schemes can unravel with patience, clarity, and courage. Let this be a reminder. Always protect what's yours. Keep your documents safe. Stay alert. And never dismiss the quiet signs of wrongdoing. Because corruption doesn't just steal property, it poisons land trust and memory. But justice, justice restores. And maybe this was only the beginning. If this story moved you, consider liking, subscribing, and sharing. Your support helps us bring more hidden truths to light. Until next time, stay sharp, stay safe, and never stop asking questions.